Part 1. The Vanishing Patient. The rain came down in steady sheets that night, drumming against the roof of Detective Adrian Cross's car, as if the heavens themselves were trying to wash the city clean. He had been in this line of work for almost 15 years, and nights like these always carried a certain weight. Something about the rain made crimes feel heavier, the streets emptier, and the shadows more alive. He sat parked across from a decaying building that loomed like a scar on the city's edge. The abandoned Ravenswood Psychiatric Hospital. Its stone facade was cracked, windows broken and boarded up, weeds twisting through the rusting iron gates. It was the kind of place kids dared each other to enter on Halloween, and adults avoided even in broad daylight. Adrian wasn't here because of ghost stories, though. He was here because a man named Elias Ward, a 34-year-old accountant with no criminal record and no history of mental illness, had been seen entering the hospital 3 nights ago. He never came back out. The first witness was a security guard from a nearby warehouse who swore he saw Elias standing in the rain at 2 a.m., staring at the hospital gates. The second was a homeless man who claimed he heard whispers coming from the building the same night, and saw a figure step inside. After that, Elias vanished. His family reported him missing, and the case had landed on Adrian's desk. Most missing person cases followed predictable trails: arguments, debts, affairs, or secret double lives. But something about this one felt different. Elias's phone was last pinged near Ravenswood. His car was abandoned a block away, and yet no one could explain what drew him to a condemned psychiatric hospital in the dead of night. Adrian pushed open his car door, the chill of the rain instantly seeping into his coat. He locked the vehicle and crossed the street, his boots crunching broken glass scattered along the sidewalk. The iron gates groaned as he shoved them open, the rust screaming in protest. The closer he got, the more oppressive the building became. It wasn't just old, it felt wrong, as if the walls themselves carried the weight of every scream, every broken mind, every forgotten patient who had once been locked inside. He clicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The entrance doors were boarded up, but someone had pried one loose recently. Fresh splinters hung from the edges, and the wood was damp with rain. Elias had come this way. Inside, the hospital greeted him with a suffocating stench of mildew and rot. The air was thick with dust, disturbed only by the occasional drip of water echoing through the corridors. His flashlight swept over peeling paint, rusted gurneys, and graffiti sprayed across the walls. "Leave while you can. They're still here. Don't listen to them." The messages were scrawled in shaky, frantic handwriting. Adrian paused, running his fingers across one of them. It was old, at least a decade. Teenagers, maybe, or squatters. Still, it set his teeth on edge. He followed the main hall, his footsteps loud against the cracked tiles. Doors lined either side, some ajar, others sealed shut. He pushed one open and found what had once been a patient ward. Rusted bed frames lay scattered, mattresses ripped apart, stuffing spilling out like entrails. Chains hung from the walls, their purpose unclear but sinister all the same. A sound drifted through the silence. Whispers. Adrian froze, his hand tightening around the flashlight. It wasn't the wind. The voices were low, overlapping, impossible to make out. They seemed to come from deeper inside. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing. The whispers stopped. A chill ran down his spine, but he pressed on, pushing deeper into the hospital. He eventually found the security office, a small room cluttered with broken monitors and filing cabinets. Most of the drawers had been emptied long ago, but one file folder remained, wedged between rusted metal. He pulled it free, coughing as dust billowed out. The label read, "Ward, Elias." Adrian's pulse quickened. Elias Ward, the missing man. But how could his file be here, in a hospital abandoned since the 1980s? He flipped it open. Inside were patient intake forms. Handwritten notes described paranoia, auditory hallucinations, and episodes of violent outbursts. The admission date was recent, 3 months ago. Adrian's brow furrowed. This wasn't possible. Ravenswood had been shut down for decades. No patients, no doctors, no staff. Yet here was a file suggesting Elias Ward had been admitted, as if the hospital was still operational. The last page was worse. It was a discharge form, dated the very night Elias disappeared. The note scribbled at the bottom read, "Patient transferred to the silent corridor." Adrian stared at the words, unsettled. Silent corridor? He had never heard of it. It wasn't on any of the official hospital maps he'd seen. Suddenly, the lights flickered. For an instant, the dead monitors on the desk hummed to life, their screens flashing static. One by one, they shifted to grainy black and white images of the hospital's interior. Hallways, stairwells, patient rooms, and in one of them, standing motionless in the center of a corridor, was a man, Elias Ward. His eyes were wide, face pale, mouth moving as if he were whispering something to the darkness. Adrian spun, flashlight darting to the hallway outside. It was empty. When he turned back, the monitors had gone black again. He swore under his breath. The building had no electricity. This was impossible. Gathering himself, he tucked the file under his arm and left the office. He needed to check the basement. If there was a silent corridor, that was the most likely place. The stairs groaned under his weight as he descended, each step echoing like a warning. The air grew colder, damper. His breath misted in front of him. At the bottom, he found a heavy steel door, padlocked shut. Faded letters across it read, "Restricted access, staff only." The padlock, however, was new. Someone had been down here. Recently, Adrian crouched, pulling a set of lockpicks from his coat pocket. A few twists, a click, and the padlock snapped open. The hinges screamed as he pushed the door inward. What lay beyond was a corridor unlike the rest of the hospital. The walls were pristine, white, untouched by decay. The floor tiles gleamed under fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. It was as if he had stepped into another world entirely. A part of the hospital still alive, hidden beneath the ruins above. And from somewhere down the hall came the whispers, low, endless, overlapping. He raised his flashlight, though he didn't need it here. The corridor stretched impossibly long, vanishing into the distance. The whispers grew louder, yet he still couldn't make out the words. Then, just at the edge of his vision, he saw a figure standing perfectly still. Elias Ward. The man's lips moved, forming words Adrian couldn't hear. Slowly, Elias raised his hand and pointed, not at Adrian, but at the wall beside him. Adrian turned his light. There, written in fresh, dripping red paint, were the words, "Welcome back, Detective Cross." Part 2. The Corridor of Whispers. The words glared back at Adrian from the wall, thick and wet, as though they had been painted only moments ago. "Welcome back, Detective Cross." He stood frozen, his breath shallow, his grip on the flashlight tightening until his knuckles turned white. Whoever had written that knew his name. They knew he would come here. But how? His heart pounded in his ears. He forced himself to scan the rest of the corridor, searching for movement. Elias Ward was gone. The figure that had been standing at the far end had vanished as if he'd never been there. Adrian moved forward cautiously, each step echoing too loudly in the sterile hall. The whispers persisted, though he still couldn't make sense of them. They rose and fell, layered voices weaving together into something that felt intentional, almost like a chant. He glanced back at the steel door he had entered through. It stood open, leading back into the rotting, abandoned hospital. Yet the corridor he was in looked brand new, polished, sterile, alive. The contrast made his skin crawl. He reached out, touching the white walls. Cold, smooth, real, not a hallucination. Or so he told himself. The corridor stretched longer than it should have. Adrian had walked at least 50 yards, yet it felt endless. No intersections, no doors, just a straight tunnel lined with buzzing lights. His instincts screamed at him to turn back, but curiosity and duty pushed him forward. Eventually, he noticed something strange. The whispers were no longer random. They were words, faint but distinct. "You shouldn't be here. He's not who you think. The corridor takes them all." Adrian stopped dead, straining to listen. The voices overlapped, male and female, young and old, blending together like a chorus of the damned. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice cracking against the silence that followed. The whispers ceased. A soft metallic sound echoed ahead, like a door unlocking. Adrian followed it, his pulse quickening. At last, a door appeared on the left side of the corridor, sleek, metal with no handle, just a rectangular slot where a keycard would go. Beneath it, in neat black letters, was a sign, "Patient Files, Archive." He reached for the slot. It was locked, of course. He cursed under his breath and stepped back. Just as he did, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Someone was behind him. Adrian spun around, flashlight beam sweeping the corridor. Empty. And yet, the whispers returned, louder now, urgent. Don't let him in. He doesn't remember. Adrian Cross is already dead. The last phrase sent a chill down his spine. He forced the thought aside. Delusions. Tricks. Someone was trying to break him. Then he noticed something else. The corridor was no longer empty. Photographs now lined the walls. Dozens of them, framed in glass, stretching in both directions. Adrian stepped closer, inspecting the nearest one. It was a black and white portrait of a patient. Eyes wide, expression vacant. A small brass plate beneath it read, Elias Ward. Admitted 2025, he swallowed hard and moved to the next. Another face, another patient. Names he didn't recognize, all recent dates. The further he went, the more the faces began to look familiar. People he'd passed on the street. A woman who worked at a diner he frequented. A bus driver. A man who sold newspapers. All of them labeled as patients. All admitted within the last year. And then he froze. The next frame held his own face. Detective Adrian Cross. The brass plate beneath it read, Admitted 2022. Status, active patient. The air left his lungs. He stumbled back, shaking his head violently. No, that's not real. His reflection in the glass stared back at him, eyes dull, lips pressed tight. He lifted a hand, pressing it to the frame. The glass was cool, solid, real. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to play this game. His file upstairs, the photographs, the whispers. But why? Adrian backed away, his flashlight beam jittering across the corridor. His breathing came fast and shallow. He needed to get out. He turned, sprinting toward the steel door at the far end. But when he reached it, the door was gone. The corridor stretched endlessly, in both directions, lined with patient portraits that hadn't been there before. Every 20 feet, another frame. Every frame, another face he knew. He staggered forward, disoriented. His flashlight flickered. The buzzing overhead lights dimmed, then flared, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing through the hall. Adrian whipped around, shining his light toward the sound. A man was approaching. At first the details were hazy. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with unnerving calm. As he drew closer, the beam of Adrian's flashlight caught his face. Adrian's blood ran cold. It was him, another Adrian Cross, identical in every way. Same trench coat, same stubble, same weary eyes. But this one was smiling, a slow, cruel smile that twisted his features into something alien. The whispers surged, deafening. He's the real one. You don't belong here. The corridor chooses. Adrian raised his gun, his hands trembling. Stay where you are! The other Adrian didn't stop. He simply tilted his head, the smile widening. You're late, the double said. His voice was Adrian's voice, only colder. We've been waiting for you. And then, without warning, the lights went out. The whispers stopped. Darkness swallowed him whole. Part 3. The doctors who never left. The darkness was suffocating. Adrian stood frozen, his gun raised, his other hand clutching the flashlight that refused to turn back on. The air in the corridor had shifted. He could feel it pressing against his skin, thick and heavy like a storm about to break. Somewhere in the blackness, footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, circling him. He spun, trying to follow the sound, but it came from everywhere at once. Who are you? He shouted into the void. Why are you doing this? No answer. Just the shuffle of shoes against tile, then a sharp click. A light flickered overhead. The corridor was no longer endless. Instead, he stood at a crossroads. 4 hallways stretched outward, sterile and blindingly white, each lined with doors. The portraits were gone. The whispers silenced. Adrian lowered his gun, breath ragged. His instincts screamed at him. This wasn't just psychological manipulation. Something was bending reality itself. He picked a hallway at random and moved forward. The first door he opened revealed what looked like an office. Unlike the decayed husks upstairs, this one was immaculate. A desk sat neatly arranged with papers, a lamp glowing softly. Medical charts lined the walls, their ink crisp and fresh. Adrian stepped inside, scanning the room. On the desk lay a leather-bound ledger. The cover bore the hospital's crest, Ravenswood Psychiatric Institute. He flipped it open. Pages upon pages of handwritten entries filled the book. Each documented patient admissions, dates, symptoms, treatments, His finger traced down a page until he stopped at a familiar name. Ward, Elias. Paranoia. Delusions. Treatment, corridor exposure. Result, pending. Another page, Cross, Adrian, identity dissociation. Treatment, corridor exposure. Result, ongoing. His throat tightened. The word treatment stuck out like a thorn. Corridor exposure. What did that mean? Before he could dwell further, a soft creak came from the far side of the room. A door he hadn't noticed before was slowly opening. A figure stepped through. An elderly man in a white lab coat. Thin-framed glasses perched on his nose. His eyes were sharp, clinical, but there was something hollow about them, like looking into glass marbles. "You shouldn't be here," the man said, his voice calm, measured. "This area is restricted to staff." Adrian raised his gun instinctively. "Stay back. Who are you?" The man didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Dr. Samuel Hargrove, head of psychiatry at Ravenswood." Adrian's grip tightened on the weapon. Ravenswood was shut down in 1983. That would make you dead. Hargrove finished for him. His smile widened. "No, detective. We never left. None of us did." Adrian felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Where's Elias Ward? What did you do to him?" Hargrove adjusted his glasses, unbothered by the accusation. Elias was a promising subject, very responsive to treatment. The corridor revealed much about him. "What corridor?" Adrian demanded, though the answer already loomed in his mind. "The silent corridor," Hargrove said, as if it were obvious. "It's more than a hall. It is a mirror. It peels away the layers we hide behind, shows us our truest selves. For some it is salvation. For others," he trailed off, his expression hardening. "Ruin," Adrian shook his head. "That's insane. The hospital is abandoned. This place shouldn't even exist." Hargrove tilted his head, studying him like a specimen under glass. "And yet here you are. Why do you think that is?" Adrian didn't answer. His pulse thundered in his ears. The doctor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You came because you belong here, detective. You've always belonged." Adrian aimed the gun at his chest. Not another step, but Hargrove didn't stop. He leaned in, close enough for Adrian to see the veins in his eyes. His breath smelled faintly of antiseptic. "You can't run from the corridor," Hargrove whispered. "It knows you. It knows what you did." Adrian's finger hovered over the trigger, but before he could act, the lights flickered, and Hargrove was gone. The office was empty. The papers, the desk, even the lamp had vanished. Only dust and cobwebs remained. Adrian lowered the gun slowly, his chest heaving. Was he losing his mind? He left the office and continued down the hall. Every door he opened revealed something different. An operating theatre with gleaming instruments laid out as if for surgery. A therapy room where chairs sat in a perfect circle. A laboratory humming with machines that shouldn't exist anymore. And always, the same thing. Files, records, ledgers. Each one meticulously detailing patients Adrian knew from the outside world. People who had gone missing over the years, written off as runaways, suicides, or unsolved cases. They were all here. All patients. Adrian stopped when he reached a surgical ward. The air was colder here, sterile in a way that prickled his skin. A single operating table sat in the center, chains bolted to its sides. Above it, a large two-way mirror reflected his image back at him. Or rather, it should have. Because the man in the reflection wasn't him. It was the other Adrian, the double he had seen in the corridor. The reflection smirked, raising its hand in a mock salute. Adrian's stomach twisted. He raised his gun, pointing it at the mirror. But the double only mouthed words he couldn't hear. Then the lights behind the glass flickered on. A row of doctors stood there, all in white coats, their faces pale and emotionless. Among them was Hargrove. They were watching him like a specimen in a cage. Adrian stumbled back, heart racing. The whispers surged again, filling the room. "We're still here." "He doesn't know." "You can't leave, Adrian." The lights cut out. When they returned, the mirror was shattered. The doctors were gone. But on the operating table lay a file folder. Adrian approached it cautiously. The label on the front made his blood run cold. Patient, Cross, Adrian, treatment plan, corridor induction. Hands trembling, he opened it. The notes inside were dated years ago. They described him in detail. His childhood, his career, his marriage, even his divorce. Every case he had worked, every failure, every doubt, and one phrase repeated over and over. Subject shows resistance to treatment. Recommend continued exposure. Adrian's vision blurred. His head spun. No, this isn't real. It can't be. The file slipped from his hands, scattering pages across the floor. His own face stared up at him from medical photographs, eyes vacant, strapped to the operating table. He staggered backward, clutching his head, and then a voice spoke, clear and close, cutting through the chaos. Detective Cross. Adrian spun. At the far end of the surgical ward stood Elias Ward. His eyes were wide, his face pale, but his voice was steady. You shouldn't have come here, Elias said. They'll never let you leave. Part 4. The False Memories. Elias Ward's presence rooted Adrian to the floor. The missing man stood rigid at the far end of the surgical ward, pale and gaunt, as if he hadn't seen daylight in weeks. His clothes hung loose on his frame, his eyes hollow yet burning with an intensity that unsettled Adrian more than the whispers ever had. Adrian steadied his voice. Elias Ward, you're alive. Elias shook his head slowly. Alive isn't the right word. Adrian took a cautious step forward. Your family reported you missing. I've been looking for you. We can get out of here. Elias's lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. Out, detective, there is no out. Once the corridor takes you, it never lets go. Adrian clenched his jaw. What are you talking about? Who's behind this? The doctors. Hargrove? Elias's expression darkened. You still don't get it. His eyes darted to the broken mirror, then back to Adrian. They're not behind this. You are. Adrian felt his chest tighten. Me? Elias nodded, stepping closer. You brought me here. You admitted me, just like all the others. Adrian shook his head violently. No. I've never seen you before in my life until your file crossed my desk. Elias laughed bitterly, the sound echoing unnaturally in the ward. That's the lie they gave you. That's the memory they allowed you. But the truth, he leaned in, whispering like the voices in the walls. The truth is you're not a detective. You're a patient. You've always been a patient. Adrian staggered back, pulse hammering. That's not true. I know who I am. But even as he said it, doubt coiled in his gut. The whispers surged, louder now, overwhelming. He doesn't remember. Show him the files. Cross belongs here. Adrian clamped his hands over his ears, but the voices pressed through. He stumbled against the operating table, scattering the photographs of himself strapped down, lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. Memories flickered, strange, fragmented, intrusive. A room padded with white walls, straps biting into his wrists, a doctor's voice, calm and detached. Subject Cross, begin induction. No, Adrian muttered, shaking his head. That didn't happen. That's not me. Elias watched him with pity. The corridor makes you forget. It shows you a life you never had, a career, a purpose, but it's all fabrication. You were one of us, long before me. Adrian's breaths came in ragged gasps. If that's true, then why do I remember everything? My cases, my partner, He stopped, his throat tightening. His partner. What was his partner's name? The memory slipped like water through his fingers. He could picture a shadow, a voice, laughter shared in a patrol car. But the details were gone. No name, no face, nothing. Panic clawed at him. Do you see? Elias whispered. Your life is full of holes. Places where the corridor erased the truth. Adrian backed away, his gun shaking in his hands. No, this is manipulation. Mind games. None of this is real. Elias didn't move. He only repeated softly, Then why are you here? The question lingered like a poison. Why was he here? He remembered being assigned Elias's missing person case. He remembered his captain giving him the file. He remembered the drive to Ravenswood in the rain. But when he tried to picture the captain's face, blank, the precinct, foggy, his own apartment, distorted. The corridor had crept into his memories, rewriting them. Adrian staggered into the hallway, desperate for air. The walls closed in around him, the buzzing of the lights drilling into his skull. He pressed a hand to the wall to steady himself, only to find it wasn't smooth anymore. It was padded, like a cell. No, he whispered. The corridor flickered, shifting. One moment sterile and white, the next a madhouse labyrinth. Doors slammed open and shut. Shadows darted across his vision. The whispers became screams. Admit him? He belongs to the corridor. Don't let him wake. Adrian sprinted blindly, the hallways twisting in impossible angles. He turned corner after corner until he burst into a room. It was an archive. Rows of cabinets stretched to the ceiling, each drawer labelled with patient names. He yanked one open, flipping through folders. Everyone bore the same format. Name, date of admission, treatment notes. He found Elias Ward's, then others, people who had gone missing. Then his hands froze on a folder labeled Cross, Adrian. Inside were dozens of pages, thicker than the rest. Handwritten notes dating back years. Subject exhibits delusional identity formation. Believes himself to be a law enforcement officer. Hallucinations consistent with corridor exposure. Recommend reinforcement of fabricated memories. The words blurred. Adrian stumbled, gripping the cabinet for support. His vision swam as more fragmented memories forced their way in. Himself, strapped to a chair. A doctor's voice reciting details of a detective's life. Faces painted into his mind like brushstrokes. A badge pressed into his palm, all of it false. He dropped the file, gasping. His life, his identity, was a construct. Then a voice cut through the storm. Calm. Familiar. Detective Cross. He spun. Dr. Hargrove stood in the doorway, flanked by two more doctors in white coats. Their faces were impassive, clinical, as if this was all routine. You've made remarkable progress, Hargrove said smoothly. Most subjects don't get this far before breaking. Your mind is strong. Adrian raised his gun, though it felt useless now. You did this to me. You made me believe I was someone I'm not. Hargrove inclined his head. We gave you purpose. Without it, you'd be lost. The corridor feeds on identity. It consumes the weak but the strong. The strong becomes something more. I'm not your experiment, Adrian spat. Hargrove's eyes gleamed. Aren't you? Every detective needs a case, Adrian. We gave you one. Over and over, you've hunted yourself through these halls. Each time you forget, and each time you return. That is the cycle. That is the treatment. The other doctors nodded in eerie unison. Adrian's mind reeled. If what they said was true, then every investigation, every missing person, every step he had taken here, had been nothing but another layer of the same delusion. No, he whispered. I don't accept that. Hargrove smiled faintly. Acceptance isn't required. The corridor will decide. He raised a hand, and the walls around them shifted. The archive melted away, replaced by the endless white hall lined with doors. The silent corridor. Adrian stood at its center once again, surrounded by whispers. Behind him, Elias's voice rang out, urgent. Don't listen to them. You can still fight it. Ahead, his double appeared, stepping calmly from the shadows, that same cruel smile twisting his face. The whispers roared, drowning everything. Choose. One must remain. The corridor decides. Adrian's gun shook in his hand. His double mirrored the motion perfectly, raising a weapon of his own. 2 Adrians. 1 corridor, 1 truth waiting to shatter everything. Part 5. The duplicate case. The gun in Adrian's hand felt heavier than it ever had before. Sweat dripped from his brow, his pulse hammering so hard it drowned out the whispers. His double stood a few feet away, posture identical, weapon raised in the same trembling grip. It was like staring into a mirror that could think for itself. Put it down, Adrian growled. The double smirked faintly. You first. They circled one another, steps measured, boots echoing on the corridor's endless floor. The white walls pulsed faintly, as though breathing, stretching on forever in both directions. Elias stood to the side, his face pale with desperation. Don't trust him, Cross. He's not you. The double's eyes flicked toward Elias. Funny. That's exactly what I'd say if I wanted you to pick me. Adrian's finger twitched against the trigger. What are you? The double tilted his head, expression eerily calm. I'm you, the real you, the one who remembers everything. No, Adrian hissed. I'm real. I have a life, a career. His throat closed. The memory of his partner's name still wouldn't come. Neither would the face of his captain or the details of his own apartment. The double's smile widened, cruel and knowing. Go on. Tell me about your partner, your captain, your home. Name them. Picture them. Adrian's mouth opened, but no words came. The silence was damning. Elias took a step forward, voice breaking. Don't listen to him, Cross. He's part of the corridor. It's a trick. The double's gaze sharpened. And what do you think he is? A lost patient begging you to join his madness. Look around. Does anything about this place resemble reality? Adrian's grip faltered. His gun dipped slightly, wavering between the two men. The whispers surged, a cacophony in his skull. Shoot him. He's lying. You're lying to yourself. He pressed his free hand against his temple, trying to steady his thoughts. The corridor seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as if feeding on his indecision. The double's voice cut through, steady and commanding. "You've always been the patient. They gave you a story, Detective Adrian Cross, solving mysteries, saving the lost. But it's a construct, an experiment, a lie you've told yourself so many times you almost believe it," Elias shouted back. "No, don't listen. He's not you, he's the corridor itself. It feeds by making you doubt yourself. That's its power." Adrian's vision blurred. The two figures warped and shimmered, at times identical, at times monstrous shadows of themselves. One moment Elias was standing there, desperate and gaunt. The next, he was a faceless figure in a hospital gown, skin stretched tight across bones. One moment, the double was his twin. The next, he was strapped to a chair, electrodes sizzling against his skull. Reality bent and snapped like brittle glass. Adrian dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "Stop! Stop it!" The double crouched before him, lowering his gun, but not his voice. "It only ends when you choose, Adrian. You can accept what you are, or you can keep chasing shadows until you break." Elias dropped beside him too, gripping his arm. "You don't have to choose. That's the trap. The corridor wants you to pick, because either way, it wins. Don't give it what it wants." Two voices. Two truths. The corridor pulsed, lights flickering violently. A door appeared behind each figure, one leading into darkness, the other into blinding light. The whispers sharpened into words. One is real, one is false. The patient must decide. Adrian's gun trembled. He raised it again, pointing it at the double. The man didn't flinch, only stared back with calm, piercing certainty. Then he swung the barrel toward Elias. Elias's eyes widened, tears streaking his face. "No, Cross, don't!" "I'm trying to save you." Adrian's finger hovered on the trigger. His chest heaved. "Which of you is real?" he whispered. Both answered at once. "I am." The corridor erupted. Walls shook. Doors slammed open, spewing white light that seared Adrian's vision. The whispers became screams, chanting, demanding, "Choose, choose, choose." Adrian roared, firing the gun. The blast echoed endlessly. Smoke curled in the corridor's stale air. When his vision cleared, only one figure remained standing. The other was gone, erased. As though never there, Adrian dropped the gun, his hands shaking violently. What did I do?" The survivor stepped closer, face calm. "You did what you had to. You chose." Adrian's stomach churned. "But did I choose right?" The figure smiled faintly. "Does it matter?" The corridor's lights dimmed, the whispers fading into silence. For the first time since he entered, there was quiet. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. The survivor offered a hand. "Come on, there's still one last corridor to walk." Adrian hesitated, then took the hand. As they walked, the corridor shifted again. Walls dissolved, revealing not endless white, but the cold steel of Ravenswood's underground tunnels. For a moment, Adrian thought he'd broken free. But then he saw them, rows of cells stretching into darkness, each occupied by figures strapped down, eyes wide and lifeless. Each one wore his face. Hundreds of Adrians, each in different states of decay, some skeletal, some fresh, some twitching as though still alive. His breath caught in his throat. What is this?" The survivor's grip tightened on his hand. His voice was calm, almost tender. "This is the truth. Every time you've been here, you've chosen. And every time you've died. The corridor makes another, again and again, until you finally accept." Adrian staggered back, horror clawing at him. No, I can't. This can't be real." The survivor stepped forward, his face morphing, shifting seamlessly between Elias, the double, and finally, Adrian himself. "You asked which of us is real," he whispered. "The answer is simple." He leaned close, eyes blazing with impossible light. "None of us." Adrian screamed, the sound ripping through the endless cells. The silent corridor swallowed it whole. Part 6. The Silent Corridor. The echo of his scream bled into silence. The corridor hushed, as if savoring his despair. Adrian staggered against the rows of cells, his eyes scanning the endless procession of his own faces staring back at him. Hundreds, maybe thousands, each one of them a version of Adrian Cross, or at least something wearing his skin. Some were young, vibrant, their detective's coat uncreased, their eyes alive with determination. Others were ancient husks, mouths gaping soundlessly, their features collapsed into skeletal parody. All of them locked away, all of them forgotten. Adrian's knees buckled. This isn't real. This can't be real. The survivor, his double, his reflection, his phantom, paced slowly beside him. It's as real as anything else you've ever believed, which is to say, as real as you make it. Adrian gripped the bars of the nearest cell. The man inside looked back at him with terror. His own voice echoed from that throat, weak and cracked. "Help me. Get me out of here!" Adrian staggered away, bile rising in his throat. That's me," the double tilted his head. "Is it? Or is it just another mask the corridor wears? Does it matter?" Adrian rounded on him, voice raw. "Why me? Why keep making me over and over again? What's the point of this sick cycle?" The double's eyes gleamed. "Because you're strong. The others break too easily. They collapse into madness, or they accept too quickly. But you fight. You claw at the illusion. You resist. That makes you useful. That makes you the perfect subject." Adrian shook his head. "No, I'm not your subject. I'm not part of this." The double smiled faintly. "Then prove it." A door materialized at the end of the hall. Not the sterile white of the corridor doors, but an old oak door, warped with age, its brass handle dull with tarnish. Adrian's pulse quickened. The double gestured toward it. "The way out, or so they let you believe." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "So it's just another trick." The double shrugged. "Isn't everything?" The rows of Adrians moaned in unison, a haunting chorus of despair. Their voices overlapped, rising to a fever pitch. "Take me with you." "Don't trust him. You'll never escape. You already chose." Adrian clamped his hands over his ears, stumbling toward the door. The whispers didn't stop. They became thoughts inside his own head. What if you're just another patient? What if all of this is fabricated, just another delusion? What if you never left that chair? He grasped the handle. It was warm, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. The double's voice was suddenly behind him, intimate, inescapable. "Careful, Adrian. That door doesn't lead out. It leads in, and once you open it, you'll see what's been waiting all along." Adrian twisted the handle. The door creaked open. Darkness yawned beyond. Not empty, but thick, oppressive, alive. The kind of darkness that devours sound, devours thought. He felt it tugging at him, pulling him forward. For a moment he thought he saw something within it. Not shapes, not people, just a vast presence, stretching forever, watching, waiting. The corridor itself. It wasn't a place. It wasn't a hospital. It wasn't walls and doors and files. It was a living thing, and it had been feeding on him from the beginning. Adrian stumbled back, slamming the door shut, heart pounding. The double watched him with quiet satisfaction. "Now you see, the corridor isn't something you escape. It's something you belong to." Adrian's breaths came in ragged gasps. No, there has to be a way out," the double smiled. "There is, but you won't like it." A sudden crash tore through the hall. Elias appeared from a side passage, his face wild with desperation. "Cross, don't listen to him. There is a way. You have to end it." Adrian turned to him, clinging to hope. "How? Tell me how." Elias's eyes blazed. "Destroy the core! The corridor can't hold you if you burn it down from the inside. That door," he pointed to the oak door, trembling. "That's it. Behind there is the heart of all this. If you step through, if you confront it, you can end the cycle." The double laughed coldly. "He's lying. There is no core. There's only the truth. You're part of it. Kill yourself, destroy yourself, and maybe the corridor will spit out another Adrian. But you won't escape." Adrian's gaze darted between them. Elias wild with urgency, the double, calm and unyielding, both claiming to hold the truth, both demanding he choose. The corridor began to collapse around them, walls shuddering, lights flickering. The Adrians in the cells screamed, their voices rising into a single deafening wail. Adrian clutched his head, the world spinning. "No more lies," he bellowed. He turned, firing his gun, not at Elias, not at the double, but at the door. The oak splintered, darkness spilling out like liquid smoke. It surged across the corridor, swallowing cells, swallowing screams, swallowing everything. Elias shrieked, his form twisting, warping, unraveling into strands of shadow that dissolved into the void. The double only smiled as the darkness consumed him. "At last. You understand." Then he was gone. Adrian was alone, floating in nothing. The corridor was gone. Ravenswood was gone. The cells, the whispers, the faces, gone. He stood in absolute silence. For a long time, there was nothing. Then faintly, a sound, a monitor beeping, a voice, distant yet familiar. Subject Cross is stabilizing. Prepare the next cycle. Adrian's eyes snapped open. He was strapped to a chair, electrodes on his temples, a blinding light overhead. Doctors moved around him, faces blurred, masks muffling their words. On a table nearby sat a folder, case file, Elias Ward. A hand reached toward him, pressing a badge into his palm. Detective Cross, a voice said calmly. We have a new case for you, Adrian screamed as the world folded back into the corridor.